We talk about some of the most common mistakes we see from founders, from marketers when it comes to their websites. This is very top of mind for me because I've been doing a lot of homepage breakdowns, and not just homepage breakdowns, but site breakdowns. We start to see how the whole structure of the company is being represented online. And with no context, you can't really make an accurate assumption of to what the how to make a good or bad website. So the most common mistakes that people are making on their websites is a combination of a couple things. One of them is the easiest to talk about, and that's just basic UX principles. UX stands for user experience. I know experience starts with E, but UX kind of rolls off the tongue a little bit better, I guess you could say. And what it means is the common best practices of the web. So you think like how humans read a screen, behavior, social psychology, things like contrast, so making buttons stand out, font sizes, there's a minimum font size you should have, there's a contrast ratio you should have, there's, default placements in terms of being able to make websites accessible for screen readers. There's a lot of under the hood stuff that I had to learn a lot about as a designer. There's a lot of tactical things that go into this thing that we do. So that's what UX is. Also things like more under the hood stuff like SEO, page load times, image compression, alt tagging on your images, things like that. So while keeping it high level minus the last little bit there, that's what UX is. Another piece of it is what I kind of call social awareness. So a lot of founders, a lot of marketers, they'll design a website that looks good to them and not to their target buyer. So, for instance, a lot of times you'll see when you go to maybe small mom and pop shops, say you serve small businesses, just like 99% of freelancers and service providers. That's great. So I want to tell you that the last thing that you want to do, and I can say this with a very confident mindset, the very last thing that you want to do if you serve small businesses is design a super fancy, complex, dark mode, techie website with a lot of, interactions, meaning things that move, and in your perception make you appear high status. You don't want to do that. Why? Because you sell to small businesses, there's a certain element of mom and pop and trust that is earned when you go to a simple, straightforward, usually light mode, usually default, standard, approachable copy on their website. A really good example of this is my friend, Alex Folks. I think he might be a mutual of ours, I'm not sure, but he provides back-end automation, so CRM and HR support for small businesses. For example, he is someone that wants to sort of appeal to that mom and pop vibe. And then you have the other end of this where if you're an agency, if you are a creative, if you're a marketing and creative agency, and you're selling higher ticket B2B usually, you want to appear to have that high status, right? You want to elevate that brand presence a little bit. You want to have some of the fancy features, the interactions, dark mode. You want to make it look like you invested a lot into your website. So that when other marketers or, buyers or teams come to your website to make the next step, whether it's to book a call or to request an inquiry or anything like that, they feel like they're going to get their problem solved. It's that credibility, it's that status elevation that comes with, having a beautiful and well-developed, thoughtfully curated online presence. Another mistake a lot of founders make, and this one is more for startups and people who sort of take that DIY approach when they first start. It's especially common. I'm a firm believer also, side tangent, that everyone should design their first website. Everyone should build their first website. But like I said, the third problem is this element called peacocking, which is I've kind of termed it, and hang with me as I explain it. But peacocking is this philosophy where people don't accurately represent who they are in order to make themselves appear higher status, and it actually puts them at a disadvantage. So what I mean by this is that a lot of times people will avoid some of the best practices of what they should do on websites, or they will make it seem like they're trying to make themselves, they talk about themselves a lot. It's a symptom of this. And symptoms of peacocking. A lot of times, you can read it in the copy. A lot of times you can read, you can tell, you can sniff it out right away. People aren't being genuine. And Brian, I can tell you, and I know you know this as sales coach, people can sniff bullshit from a mile away. Even as far away as your website on the other side of the world, that's where they're seeing it. So, a lot of times people try and elevate their status to a point where it makes them not relatable and nobody wants to take the next step because there's no trust going on whatsoever. So physical manifestations of this include not personalizing the site appropriately, so not adding relevant images or photos or headshots. It's always a really good thing to have elements of social proof as well, so earning trust by using testimonials, photos of people, links back out to other relevant sources, avoiding putting pricing on the website and not having enough information. Lack of information is one of the fastest routes to losing trust or not ever earning it in the first place. So to summarize, the biggest mistakes that we see on websites, the peacocking analogy I just gave, basic sort of lack of knowledge around UX, best practices, principles, and just an ignorance around that stuff. And also the lack of tactical knowledge of how to translate that to the web.